wanted to call the album 40 Years Later, and I was doing a vault experience in Miami with Gene, and we were doing a Q&A like this, you know, with a little less people, and I polled the audience, and I said, what should I call the next album, 40 Years Later? And I got a lukewarm response, and then Gene, I'm going to imitate Gene right now.
Please.
Ace, you should call the album Spaceman. I said, okay, coming from you, great. I don't want Tommy Thayer knocking on my door going, I'm a spaceman. I don't think so. I do not think so. By the way, I have nothing against Tommy. I'm friends with Tommy. You know, he used to be our road manager. Believe it or not, I don't know if everybody knows that, but you know.
If you've read Ace's book, you may know that. There's one story in particular in there about you and Tommy on the road that we probably don't have to get into.
Is that when I punched him?
Yeah, that'd be the one.
Well, you know, that's really out of character for me. What happened was we had an ongoing rule on tour that there's no women allowed in the dressing room. But of course, you know, when Shannon and Paul's wife came on tour, they just pranced.
And let me get this straight. Kiss, no women in the dressing room.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because like, you know, when we're getting ready, we don't want anybody in. We don't even want guys in there. The only women that are allowed in the dressing room are the women that dress us, which isn't too bad. We had women dressing us and stuff. You know, they'd be, you know, during the day they're running around and washing our costumes and ironing them and making sure everything's. You know, Gene's costume had to constantly be fixed, you know, because they had all that floppy stuff that would break, and they had glue guns and stuff, you know. But they're doing that all day, and then when prior to the show, we're putting on our makeup, and then the girls dress us. But you know, we had a standing rule that no girlfriends or anything are allowed in the dressing room. You know, I had a girlfriend with me, you know, a model from Canada, and of course, she always had to wait outside. Anyway, when Shannon and Paul's wife came on tour, they just pranced into the dressing room. I let it go. I didn't make a big deal out of it. But now, this is the last day of the tour in Australia. Everybody has left the dressing room. Paul, Gene, and Peter. Was Peter there? Yeah. They all, or was it Eric? It's not important to the story anyway. They had all split. So my girlfriend Sharon was standing outside, and I said, hey, honey, come on in. Nobody's here. So 5 minutes later, Tommy Thayer comes walking in and goes, Ace, you know the rule, no women in the dressing room. I go, there's nobody here. It's the end of the tour. And he like started, you know, being authoritative with me. So I gave him a shot. That's pretty much the story. I got aggravated. I guess the Bronx boy in me kind of came out. I want to give you my 2 cents about the Elder. You know, Bob Ezrin flew into Connecticut. You know, a lot of it was recorded at my home studio.
Yeah, you had the studio in Connecticut.
In Connecticut. It was a professional studio. I spent about $1 million on it. And, but, you know, during the recording process, I kept telling all those guys, Bob, you know, Peter wasn't there. It was Eric, Paul, and Gene. I go, this is the wrong album for this period of time. I think the fans want to hear a heavy hard rock album, and they just kept, you know, they just had a deaf ear to me. I keep just saying, you know, write a couple of songs, Ace, and do them, and you know, we'll worry about it. And I said it's not going to work, and of course the album bombed. So. Yeah, I guess I had a handle on what was happening there.
Indeed. I've seen interviews with Paul where he, after the fact, obviously, where he said he and Gene didn't realize what was happening until other people heard it. And then it was like, you know, people at the record label were some of the first to hear it.
What does
and that's
that
when
mean?
They kind of, you know, but they were convinced that it was something that it ultimately wasn't.
See, they didn't have, those guys never had any street sense. And it's not that, it's no fault of their own. You know, Gene grew up in Israel. And Paul grew up in Queens, but he wasn't a guy like me who hung out on the corner candy store and got into fights and, did crazy stuff. So, I always had my pulse on what was going on. And I knew at the time, I would have bet $1 million that album was going to fail. I didn't want it to fail. And actually, if you take that album out of sequence with the Kiss records, it's not a bad record.
Exactly.
I did some great solos on it, and there's some really good songs, but it wasn't the right record for the time. And then somebody asked me, I was doing an interview with Billboard magazine, and they said, Ace, what would have happened if The Elder never happened, and you went from your last album prior to The Elder to Creatures of the Night? And I thought for a second, because I like Creatures of the Night. It's heavy, it's powerful, it's everything I said we should have been doing when we were recording The Elder. So, I may not have quit the band.
Wow.
But, you can't rewrite history unless we go into a time warp or a black hole. Or, You hear all that crazy stuff about alternate universes?
Yeah, simulations. And
Did you hear that the world ended in 2012? Something happened at CERN, the particle accelerator, and the world, ended.
And what are we in
for
now?
like 1/10 of a second, and we didn't realize it, and now we're living in a matrix. But it's okay as long as you're having fun. It really doesn't matter, right?
I got to say, another big moment, I think, probably for everyone in this room that's old enough to remember anyway, was Halloween 1995, the MTV Unplugged, when you and Peter got up and played with the guys for the first time that we were all able to see that. What was kind of the feeling in the air at that time? I mean, because it seemed like it was imminent that you guys would return to the band. What was that sort of period like in between being estranged for so long?
It was a little strange. I think Paul and Gene had just finished a tour of conventions. Am I right? And they had, you'd walk into a room and there'd be mannequins with all our old costumes and stuff. And then, the Unplugged thing happened, and I think they were testing the waters, and they actually had recorded an album with Bruce that was due to be released that they scrapped once, Unplugged went over so big. And then the next thing you know, I'm sitting in an office negotiating a reunion tour. And the rest is history. I use that all the time, but, it just saves me a lot of words.
I love it. Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you, since we have you here, and I should probably see what time it is. We're going to open it up to questions here in a minute. It feels like that moment again has come around with, first Paul being in your video and playing on the Covers record with you, and then obviously the stuff with Gene, and you guys were just in Australia together. I watched some fan Q&As from there, and that was a lot of fun. Just seeing the chemistry of you and Gene hanging out, and two guys who have experienced
I just
so
got
much
back
together.
from Australia with them.
Yeah. I mean, obviously you're not going to make a big announcement here or anything, but it feels like, something's going to happen.
Something's leading to something,
I mean, I think we all really hope something
Everybody
was
tells me that, but I haven't been asked. Honestly, And I had a meeting with those guys several months ago, and they talked about retiring to me, and that didn't seem right either. So who knows what's going to happen? I read comments on the internet, and I fall off my bed laughing because, there's all these people that have all these different ideas of a configuration of what the next Kiss tour should be, and it's crazy. But overwhelmingly, they want me back in the band, I think. Well, I don't know. At least that's what I'm reading on the internet. I don't know. And I'm doing fine on my own. My career is on an upswing. I'm having a ton of fun. I like producing my own records. I like I don't like anybody standing over my shoulder telling me what to do. I've had a lot of freedom. And, you know, working with Paul and Gene again, you know, it would be different. But then again, I'd probably make $5 or $10 million, so
I mean,
I might consider that.